Mm. Wow. How are we doing on testing in general? I was surprised yesterday, someone who I knew, adult male, went in, they basically said, yes, we think you have it, go on home. They didn't test him, and he's got elderly parents at home. I'm amazed how many people have a similar story.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that with elderly parents at home, that he didn't get tested. Maybe the doctor wasn't aware of that.
Mhm.
But that you just answered your own question. We still don't have enough tests to be testing everybody we should be testing. There's still a backlog in several areas that are involved in testing. So I mentioned in the past personal protective equipment. If we don't have the correct equipment to be wearing to test people, we shouldn't be testing.
Mhm.
So even if we've got the test, if we don't have the personal protective equipment, we're not supposed to be doing the test anyway.
Hmm.
And then you need the swabs, and there's also still a backlog of people getting the swabs to do the testing. So it's improving. We're getting there. The point of service testing is getting out there. That's the one where you can actually test and get an answer
Mhm.
within
Mhm.
10 minutes. But as I've said in the past, this is not the movies. You don't find this, we've got this test, and then 10 minutes into the movie, the test has gotten its way through the entire United States, and everybody's getting tested. And 40
Mhm.
minutes into the movie, everybody who's got it, and by the time the movie ends, you've got a cure and everybody's fine. It's not going to work that way. The logistics is difficult. So President Trump can enact an emergency measure that asks different manufacturers to go to emergency manufacturing of ventilators and these types of tests and personal protective equipment, but it still takes time to retrofit all of those factories to do that.
Mhm.
So these things take time, and it's frustrating for all of us. Believe me, I want to be able to test people. So I just ordered antibody testing on 2 people because I saw that it's now available as of April 14th and 15th. There's 2 different tests now for blood testing for antibody. I have a patient who I saw in February, mid-February, who I believed had COVID-19. I tested him for influenza. I tested him for other respiratory pathogens. He had a high fever. He had classic symptoms, the respiratory symptoms. His fever lasted for several days. And I sent him for testing, and the health department refused to test him and said, you don't meet the criteria, because at that point you had to have traveled from
Mhm.
China. He
Mhm.
had been
Mhm.
traveling internationally, but he hadn't been to China. And the countries he had been to had not yet shown a lot of cases, and so they didn't test him. And I'm not faulting the health department for that. They only had several tests. They had enough tests to test just so many people, and so they had to be very careful with who they tested. But it just goes to show you how hard it is to know what the actual incidence and prevalence of this disease is, and what the actual mortality is, because we don't know how many people are really infected. Right?
Mhm.
So the
Mhm.
case mortality ratio, how many people die compared to how many cases we've seen, is not the actual mortality of the infection, because a lot of people get infected and don't know it.
Mhm.
In my
Mhm.
opinion, like I said about chickenpox, a lot of people get chickenpox and they don't break out, and they
Mhm.
don't get a lot of lesions. They just feel punky for a couple of days, and that's about it. Maybe not even that. And so they're convinced they didn't have it. You test them, they got the antibody, so they've had chickenpox. So once we have this antibody test widely available, and we can start testing the general population, then we'll have a better idea on what the actual incidence and prevalence was. Like I said, it was just released. It is not FDA approved. It's an FDA EUA, which is an emergency use authorization. That's different from FDA approval. So they're saying, we don't know right now what the actual sensitivity and specificity of these tests are when they're going to be used on a large scale. We know from the laboratory testing what it looks like, but that sensitivity and specificity is going to change once you have people who are not laboratory trained on exactly how to do the swab,
Mm.
getting that sample to the lab in a timely fashion, making sure that sample is handled correctly,
Mm-hmm.
the lab, doing the test exactly the way it's supposed to be done. So, we'll wait and see, but that they just became available yesterday. So I ordered 2 today on patients.